and welcome to another episode of PDA Dad UK. I want to look in this episode at what you do once you have had a formal or even an informal diagnosis of autism or an autistic related condition. So things like pathological demand avoidance, ADHD, sensory processing disorder, any of the sort of things that come along with commonly co-diagnosings with autism. We struggled with this. The process for getting girls diagnosed is far more complicated than it is for boys, because until only relatively recently it wasn't actually believed by many people that girls could be autistic. It was considered very much a male condition. A lot of the diagnosis processes that go along now and the screening processes are very heavily based on male autism, and therefore a lot of girls go through and get sort of slipped through the cracks or are missed by the net. And this is reflected in the statistics. So of all diagnosed people with autism, both adult and child, 80% are boys, which means only 20% are girls, which is obviously a huge misnomer and an issue that really does need to be addressed. It's recognised that my daughter has autism, and she has, as along with it, is pathological demand avoidance, ADHD and sensory processing disorder. These are recognised and they're being addressed now because she has this working diagnosis. The problem that a lot of people face is that once you've got that diagnosis in place, it's like, well, there's your diagnosis, see you later. And it seems like a lot of doors shut. The problem is that really the information isn't being given appropriately about what to do once you've received a diagnosis and where you can go for support and help. I will list in the description for this a lot of links to different institutions and charities which will be able to help you and you'll be able to get in touch with. And I want to sort of go through a few that have really helped me and my family once we knew what we were dealing with and what we've been able to do. We found that once the process was there, we had to fight to get everything done. We've had to fight to get the diagnosis in place. And that was a ridiculously long, stressful and unbelievable fight that we had to go through. And we're still going through it to get this formal diagnosis in place. However, with a working diagnosis, 99% of working diagnoses result in a formal diagnosis. So the great thing is that means that professionals can step in and there are support options available. The first place I would always recommend anyone go to is the National Autistic Society. They are very helpful to us because they can actually signpost you in directions of specific support that are going to be helpful for you. We've already looked at the fact that, and it's a commonly known thing, it seems within the autistic community, but not widely known outside of it, is that autism, there's no two autistic people that are alike. Throw out the preconceptions of Rain Man and whatever this Sia movie is going to be like with the representation of autism that she's chosen to show. Every autistic person is different, and many autistic people you wouldn't know were autistic until you get to know them on a deeper level, and then you start to see some of these traits. This is due to masking. And we've discussed masking in the past. Please do check out the video on masking because it is really helpful and it's something that people need to understand a lot more. Masking does more damage in the long term from people not understanding how it works than almost any other area of autism, in my personal humble opinion. Certainly hinders things like diagnosis. We found that once that sort of diagnosis has come in place, and this is a common thing that I've heard through so many people. So the group I run on Facebook, people often talk about it. We've got the diagnosis, now what? It's just like, here you go, there's your diagnosis. What do I do next? How do I get any support? As I say, the National Autistic Society, once we had got that diagnosis in place and I was able to call them, they were able to signpost us in a lot of directions and help us a lot. There were a lot of things that we didn't know and the support that we could achieve that we didn't know, and they were able to help with that. And it varies in a lot of ways. They can signpost to different groups, local groups that may be able to sort of form support networks for yourself. With everything going on at the moment, there's a lot of Zoom groups taking place and stuff like that, but basically places that you can get support. They can also help with things like reading, and they've got a huge recommendation library type thing where you can go and look for books and things like that, which will help you to understand what your kids are dealing with and go through the different aspects of the autistic spectrum to understand what particular traits are really affecting your child and how you can manage them and help your child to flourish with them. And really that's the key. This is looking at how to help our kids to have a better tomorrow than it is today. That's my mantra. I say it a lot and it's such an important thing. My goal is to make my daughter's life tomorrow better than it is today, and that's what I will always be fighting for. And I think that's what every parent fights for their kids, regardless of their being neurotypical, being neurodiverse, having autism, having a physical disability, whatever. We want tomorrow to be better than today. So that's my first port of call. Go to the National Autistic Society. Links will be in the description, and ask what support they can provide and where they can signpost you towards. And really, it's there for signposting. For me personally, I found finding my local carers charity really helps. Now, I'm in an area where the care charity is actually fantastic. I had to become a full-time carer. I've spoken about that in previous episodes and what that involved and why I had to do it. Part of my struggle with that was that I've always been someone who works full-time, and you feel that sense that I'm contributing to society, I'm paying my taxes, I'm doing all these sorts of things, and then suddenly you're thrown into a situation where you're not doing these things, and it can feel very confronting, and I had to deal with that. Somebody recommended that I call Devon Carers and just get registered on there, which I did and didn't pay much attention to it. Part of it was I got a card that says I am a carer, and on that card it just gives details. What that really helps with is if something were to happen to me, the fact that I have that card means that it's alerted that there's a backup plan in place now. So if I'm unable to perform my duties as a carer, there is a contingency plan in place so that other people are notified and my family still get the support and help that is required. It's really important, and it's something that's had a really has been really important. There have been a couple of times where I recently had kidney stones, and I'm reliably informed, and I believe it now, that it's equivalent to the pain of childbirth. So I have new sympathies for my female audience. I cannot believe the pain I went through. I named my kidney stone Dwayne Johnson, and if you don't understand that joke, you can go look it up on Google. I won't give it away. But the pain was unbelievable, and it did incapacitate me for a few days. In that situation, we needed the backup plan to come into place. So I have my mother-in-law, who is very familiar with the issues my daughter has, but also my wife, who is in need of care herself as well. So she was able to come down, and because it's all in place, it didn't affect things like COVID restrictions that are in place at the moment, because the care aspect trumped it. She's considered part of the care support that we have in our home. So she was able to come and help while I was incapacitated in that way. The other thing that I got from the Carers Charity was that at the end of 2019 summer holidays, we had a particularly intense time, and this happened again towards the end of the summer holidays this year, probably more so with the fact that we had the lockdown and the COVID restrictions, and the kids had been at home so much, and I felt tremendously burnt out. I wasn't quite at that point, but I knew it was coming. I knew that I wasn't going to be able to cope much longer with what I was dealing with. Somebody from the group on Facebook actually recommended talking to the Carers Charities and asking for what's called a Carers Health and Wellbeing Assessment. And I did this. I made the phone call and had a face-to-face, because this was obviously pre-COVID for the first time, and went through what I was experiencing and what I was feeling. And I was stunned at the amount of support that I was able to ascertain from this. Our job as carers and as parents to these kids is so tremendously important, and it actually backs up and props up our economy. If you want to go into the sort of statistics, but basically as carers, we are saving the system so much money. To pay a professional to come and do the job that we do daily would cost 10 times what we're getting paid. And I read somewhere recently it's around about £5 billion a year is saved by the fact that we have parent carers and home carers that are under this care system, rather than having paid professionals come in to do the role and the ongoing support that's required. It's a huge effect that has, and there's a lot of support that's actually available, that's been recognised that this is needed. Different care charities in different areas are less and more effective. So I'm lucky that we're in the Devon area, and we have the Carers Charity that I've actually become an ambassador for just recently, which is Devon Carers. They're actually sanctioned by the councils to do the role. So they actually have a lot of support that not necessarily all carers charities have, or the links that are required that a lot of carers charities have. However, it's still always worth doing. And the Carers Health and Wellbeing Assessment really helped me. They went through our day-to-day and what support I was needing. One of the things I identified is that I need to be able to get some time for me and to take time aside. And one of the things I enjoy is the gym. And I find that helps with my own mental health and my mental well-being, the endorphins and the serotonin that produces, and just how that regulates our mental health. And what they were able to do is fund for me 12 months gym membership. And I was stunned. I had no idea this was available and anything like that. It's not something I'd ever sort of sought out, but it was a way they could support me to make sure that I'm at my best doing this role as a carer. They looked at my wife's condition. So part of my care role is my wife, who has some hip problems as well as epilepsy and mental health disorders as well. And what they were able to do is organise for an occupational therapist to come out. They actually came out to the home, they assessed the home, they assessed what my wife's needs were. As a result of that, we've had some just simple things like grab bars put in. We've got stairs outside the house that can be tricky for her to get up and down, so they've got a railing put in there that she's able to help herself up with. And they also assessed our bathroom, decided that was not fit for purpose, and were able to help us with getting grants and funding to get a new bathroom put in place, which we're waiting on at the moment. But obviously everything's delayed at the moment. But there are things that are just they're there to support us in our role as carers, but also for the needs of the people we're caring for. And these are charitable things, and they're there for a reason. You shouldn't be ashamed to use them. And I know I feel that sometimes, that sense of, but surely this could go to, you're there, you're doing this job, and you need that support, and these things are available to you. They were able to organise things like electricity, people to come out and just help us to assess how we were using our electricity and stuff like that, and look for ways to sort of streamline our spending and make sure that we were keeping within our means, and just ways that we could cut back on unnecessary spending where it wasn't required. They just have a tremendous amount of stuff that's available, and support that's available. So do reach out to carers charities if you're a carer yourself. If you're in receipt of a carer's allowance, you are a carer, and therefore these things will be available to you. They may be available to you even if you're not receiving the carer's allowance as well. But if your child's receiving DLA or something like that, and it's showing that there is a disability and you have a role in that, it can lead to that. I highly recommend doing it. It was astonishingly helpful to me. Depending on the different conditions that apply with autism, there are lots of other charities available as well. One particular charity that really helped us, obviously, is, as you know, my daughter is Pathological Demand Avoidance. She has PDA. And the PDA Society, the tricky part with Pathological Demand Avoidance is that it's not recognised in so many areas, including my own. It's recognised that it's a condition, it's recognised that it's there, but it's not diagnosed in our area for some reason. It still baffles me as to why. However, the PDA Society are a national society in the UK, and they are amazing at getting support. One thing they were able to help us with, we haven't utilised yet but may do down the path, is private assessment for PDA. And it's not even necessarily getting assessment, they have some more helpful ways of getting the support needed without getting a diagnosis in place. So they were able to refer us, that if we want to take it, to a lady who will do very short assessments and help with medications and requirements that may come from having PDA in a very short space of time and in an inexpensive way, in that it's private. So private diagnosis can cost anywhere from £2,000, £3,000, £4,000 depending on who you're getting it through, and isn't necessarily that helpful, unfortunately. This way it sort of bypasses that process. They have a lot of recommendations. They have, again, a good library that's available, recommended reading basically, that you can get hold of books which are really good at helping to manage PDA and stuff like that. The same applies for any sort of form of co-diagnosed condition that often accompany autism. Things like pica, hypermobility, hypersensitivity, sensory processing disorder. All of these things, there are different charities that are around. All it takes is a quick Google search, and if you type in the particular condition followed by charity and then put the UK, you'll find that there are a lot of charities that are available that you can go to, and it's not necessarily looking for anything specific, but just that support and help that can come from it. A massive support to me has been the group that I run on Facebook. A lot of parents just don't know where to go and what support's out there. Groups like that, and it's not just mine, there are other groups out there that are available as well. are fantastic for being able to approach and ask questions that nobody else really gets, and they're the day-to-day questions. And it can be, I'm struggling with toilet trailing my autistic child, what do I do? And there are people who jump in, well, this helped with us, this helped with us. And we form these communities. Twitter community is fantastic. If you use the hashtag #SendTwitterCommunity, it's brilliant. And there are loads of people on there ready to help and to be supportive, and who understand, as I say, my group on Facebook, and there are other groups out there as well. And there are groups which are specifically for, again, the co-diagnosed conditions. So there are PDA groups, there are sensory processing disorder groups, there are PICA groups out there that you can, and even groups which are focused on the more violent and aggressive side of things. So if you're experiencing violence with your child, there are groups on Facebook which have a group of parents who are all experiencing the same thing, who can help each other. And that support is really important. And finding the right group as well. Some groups aren't so helpful because the people tend to be more, misbehave, in my opinion. We keep a close eye on that with my group, and we make sure that we stay supportive, and we do a lot of posts encouraging people to remain that way, even as we've grown. Another support that's really helpful has been put together by some people I've met through Twitter, and I've interviewed on my other channel with the Grumpy Dads. It's something that I will put, again, a link in the description here, and it's a webpage designed to help signpost you to all the support that you might possibly need. There are a stack of links on there. It's only new at the moment, but they're developing it as we go, and it's got everything from where to go once you've got diagnosis, what support things are available, what websites are helpful, recommendations, also support with help with things like what happens once you reach a certain point and you click into adult services from children's services, all that kind of stuff. It's all in there. Link will be in the description. It's fantastic. There are also groups like Scope. Now, again, the link will be in the description for this. Scope is a fantastic charity that organise local support groups for parents who have kids with disabilities, learning disabilities, challenging behaviours, whatever the case. Early on in our journey, we were directed to Scope. At the time I was working full time, it was my wife that attended, but they were fantastic in that they had a group of people in the local area who could meet together and who understood from the inside what it's like to face these things. And I do find that the best advice I've ever received has come from other parents who are going through the same thing. And I'll qualify that with, I also make a point of asking actually autistic people about what's going on, and that's been equally as helpful to me as asking other parents who are in the same situation. In many cases more helpful and more enlightening and relevant to my situation at the time. I have a couple of friends who are autistic themselves, and I talked a while back about my daughter hearing voices. You can check out that video as well. I was really alarmed by this, but when I was talking to my autistic friends, she started hearing voices, and I was immediately on, schizophrenia, bipolar affective disorder, something along those lines. Apparently, I didn't know it at the time, but voices is a really common trait with autism. The autistic brain misinterprets what's our internal dialogue and hears it as a separate voice. It can be really challenging, but I had no idea about this. Actually speaking to autistic people has been tremendously helpful. The group on Facebook, we make sure that we have a 50% ratio of not only parents who are parents to autistic kids, but parents who are themselves autistic and people who are actually autistic within that moderation and admin group. And it makes such a difference, because having that perspective from the inside is just, I will never be able to understand what it's like living in the autistic brain, because I don't have an autistic brain. Being able to reach out to actually autistic people and ask these questions and know that I'm going to get a response that comes from inside the box, knowing what it's like living with these things day in and day out, has been huge. And I couldn't have been able to get the support from my daughter and the help that I can give my daughter without having addressed autistic people themselves and getting that information. That's basically what I want to say. There is a lot of support out there, but the problem with the system at the moment is that you have to look for it yourself. The worst part was we got given a list of these are places you can go to for support, and they were all links printed on a piece of paper. And the links are all at least 125 characters long each. And there's just no way people are going to type that information in, so it's just discarded. There is a stack of information out there. A simple Google search will help. You know, Autistic Charities UK, or whatever country you're in, or even in your local area. Just Googling autistic support with your local area next to it will come up with options. Again, get on the groups on Facebook, get on the groups on Twitter, or the communities that exist on Twitter. There are loads of support options out there available. Places like Scope, which do organise local group get-togethers, and at the moment I know it's being done through Zoom and things like that. Carers charities are huge. Something I've just come off actually just a couple of hours ago was a support group for part of Devon Carers for parents of autistic kids, and it was fantastic just being able to meet a bunch of other people who are in so much similar situations to me. It can feel really isolating being a parent to an autistic kid, a parent to a neurodiverse kid, or a parent to a disabled child, because other people just don't understand. And that's not a criticism, it's just, how can you understand something unless you're living it? Finding people who are living it themselves makes a real difference. And as I say, links to my group, links to Scope, links to the National Autistic Society and Devon Carers will all be in the description for this, so please do check them out. I hope everyone's doing well during this third lockdown. I hope you're all staying safe. I just want to add, if you are struggling with your mental health, reach out. You cannot hold on to these things and not reach out for help. It's not weak to ask for help. In fact, it takes courage and strength. And I want to make sure all you guys are aware of the options that are out there. There are the Samaritans and there are mental health charities that can really help, and it's not weak to do so. Even just asking a friend, or talking to a friend about what help you need, or if you think someone might be struggling, reach out yourself and see how they're doing and what you can do. We're a community and we're stronger together. Please do like this video, please do subscribe to my channel, and I want to hear in your comments what support you found really helpful once you'd got diagnosis, or even pre-diagnosis. The support that you got out there that was really helpful. If you've got links to any groups that you think might be helpful, charities that were supportive, please do put them in the comments. You're going to help more people than you know. Have a great time everyone, and I'll see you next time.